So a part of the early play session for Season 5 was actually the fact that we got to do a Q&A with the developers afterwards in the Discord server. Now, unfortunately, not every single detail I'm allowed to share. If you've paid any attention to some of the recent goings-on within the Battlefield community, I'm not going to be sharing screenshots and stuff like that, but I'm going to do my best to go through and sort of paraphrase as much of the interesting stuff that I can talk about and share with you guys what we learned in that Q&A. If you guys are new to the channel, be sure to hit that subscribe button and turn on those notifications. There is plenty more Battlefield content on the way, but with that being said, let's get stuck right into it. Now, the first question I saw that was the most intriguing to me out of all of the questions was actually about the design philosophy for the new map, Reclaimed. One of the creators essentially asked, what were the design philosophies? How did they go about making the new map? And one of the devs responded that they were really big on making this a very small, compact type of map, mentioning that a big focus of that was to do with a faster time to action. So that essentially just means it is going to be faster between each of your actions. You'll get in one gunfight and then you'll run to the next area and you'll quickly get into another gunfight. That's kind of the thing they wanted to focus on, which obviously a big part of that is just making the map smaller in general. Not only does that take place within each actual flag and area of the map itself, but then the actual traversal distances between each flag. So from E1 to C1, for example, which is pretty much the corner of the map to the center of the map. It's a very short distance. You can pretty much run everywhere on foot in this map. Obviously, it still helps to have vehicles to just get around that bit faster, but it's one of the few maps in this game you can actually legitimately run from point A to point B, and it doesn't feel like you are doing a whole ass marathon just to get to the next gunfight. They also put a lot of focus on having higher amounts of cover on the primary traversal paths, which the primary traversal path essentially just means the main areas of the map where you're actually moving from point A to point B. So not just the actual flags themselves, but the pathways between those flags, which is something that in a lot of the base maps was actually the key issue. The flags themselves might have had, enough cover, but running from point A to point B was almost running through an open field, which just means that people sitting back with a sniper or a tank sitting in that field, they're just going to demolish you. Whereas now, each of those sort of primary pathways that they've designed to sort of funnel people from each flag to the next flag, there is a lot more cover in those areas too. They also mentioned that they wanted it to be a bit more sort of war-torn in terms of the theming, which you can definitely tell as you're actually playing the game. It does feel very war-torn and very dull and dreary, which I mentioned in my actual review of the map itself, which in one way is a disappointing thing. It sucks when you have maps that aren't, super nice and colorful and stuff like that, but it also suits the game. It's a shooter. It's not meant to be all pretty and sunshine and lollipops. So having a more war-torn theming, although I do enjoy a colorful map, it does suit the, aesthetic for what they want this game to be. Now, in that post, he also did confirm that this will be 64 players only, so there's no 128 player version of this map like there are with most of the other maps in the game. You can do 128 player games in Portal, so you can play on this same map, but with obviously double the player count. But this won't be in any 128 player rotations. So when they do different rotations where it's 128 player breakthrough, for example, they won't have the new map in there, which is a bit of a shame in terms of if they do those playlists, then obviously the new map won't be there. That kind of sucks, but it does suit that 64 player mode anyway. And I think that is the best mode. I think most people agree that that is the best mode to sort of focus on, which they have definitely done with Reclaimed. They did also then finally confirm this is actually the smallest map in the game, at least in terms of the 2042 maps. I don't know if that's counting Portal, because there's obviously a lot of smaller maps in Portal, just because the previous games they had smaller maps. But as far as I know, this is the smallest map in the game, which is definitely a good thing. I do think that these smaller maps tend to work a little bit better. It's not like a small map guarantees it to be good, but I do think that the bigger the map is, the more unlikely that map is to be a good map. Just basing that off vanilla maps in this game, almost the bigger they were, the worse they were, unfortunately. So the fact that it is a smaller map is definitely a good thing in my eyes. Now, moving on to another question, someone asked if we were actually getting more Portal weapons in Season 5, and by that I mean porting the Portal weapons over to All Out Warfare. Now, they did confirm there will actually be no new Portal weapons being moved over to All Out Warfare, because the focus will be on getting all of those attachments and skins across to every single Portal weapon, whether they do that in Season 5 or whether that's an ongoing thing. And so if you guys haven't heard about that, they are adding all, or not all, but pretty much the majority of the Battlefield 2042 attachments to each of the Portal weapons that you can select in All Out Warfare, as well as a bunch of skins and stuff too. And so essentially we're getting that instead of getting a handful of extra Portal weapons, which obviously kind of sucks, but I do think that the attachments being added is a big bonus, and I would definitely rather them focus on that than just adding more and more weapons. But they don't have good attachments. So we'll have to have a pause on the new portal weapons being ported over for now, but in the long run that will definitely be best for the game anyway. Now, someone else asked why there isn't actually a new vehicle coming with Season 5, and they replied saying that they pretty much just want to shift their focus to the whole new like vehicle loadout changes that are coming in Season 5, and pretty much just making sure that it all works in terms of the balancing and stuff like that. If they add all of those changes but then also add a new vehicle, it's pretty unlikely that that vehicle would be balanced. It would either be super underpowered or super overpowered, because it's hard for them to actually compare that in their testing against all of the new changes they're making. So they pretty much said they want to sort of focus on just getting the vehicles in a much better state in terms of those loadouts and making them all a little bit more balanced, which unfortunately for the vehicle player base, that obviously sucks that we're not getting a new vehicle. But again, pretty much similar to the portal weapons, I think it is a good thing in the long run. And then when we do get more vehicles down the line, or if we do get more vehicles down the line, it's only going to make the launch of those vehicles even better at the end of the day. Now, they also clarified something about the movement. It does feel a little bit different, which I actually, not going to lie, didn't notice that much, but that's because I was actually playing on PC. The gameplay you guys can see is PC gameplay, and I am primarily a console player. So playing on keyboard and mouse versus controller, it already feels different. I didn't actually notice the difference in the movement, but a lot of people were saying it felt a little bit faster. They did confirm that the player movement is not actually any faster or slower. It's essentially just tied to the way that the camera is working in tandem with the player's position, which is pretty much just meant to make it feel a little bit more grounded and realistic. So there's going to be a little bit more like camera movement when you're carrying a heavy weapon, for example, compared to like a pistol, just similar to how it would be in real life. If you're trying to run with an LMG, your whole body's going to be like really moving, trying to sort of carry that weapon as you sprint, compared to if you're running along with a pistol, you can kind of just run pretty normally, and it's not going to make your body move differently. Therefore, your head, or in this instance the camera, isn't going to be like bobbing around as much, if that makes sense. So if you guys, when you get your hands on Season 5, feel like the movement is a little bit different, the actual movement speed and stuff like that, none of that has actually changed. It is all just to do with the way that the camera works, and essentially the way the camera is tied to the player's eyes, I guess, the point of view that you can see. You're going to have a lot more bob when you're carrying like a sniper or a LMG, but then they did also actually confirm you can reduce this in the accessibility settings. So if you don't like it, if you want it to go back to the way it was, you can just change that. It's pretty much the same type of thing as like camera sway or motion blur, those sorts of things that affect the camera. You can just tone them down as well. So I thought that one was pretty interesting, because for me, I actually didn't even notice it, which is probably a good thing. But then also that's just literally because I was playing on a different input than I normally do. So I had more things to pay attention to, like trying to not get absolutely slaughtered. But anyway, that is pretty much it for the more like in-depth details from my session anyway. Obviously there's going to be different answers and questions for the different sessions across different areas, but those are the ones that I found interesting from the Discord. Anyway, hopefully that gives you guys a bit of transparency and a bit more info on what to expect in Season 5. That is going to do it for this one though, guys. If you enjoyed the video, be sure to hit that like button, and if you are new to the channel, be sure to subscribe with those notifications on. But with that being said, thank you all very much for watching. You guys have a great day, and I'll see you all out there on the battlefield.